Hey guys, Mr. Doctor here, and our floppy dog named Oakley. Hey Oakley. And I want to begin by saying how much I miss seeing you guys and creating art with you. I've seen many of you sharing artwork, and it makes me very proud to see that you guys are still growing your art skills while at home. Today though, I want to share a book with you called The Big Orange Splot. And it was written by Daniel Pinkwater. And it's a story about Mr. Plumbean. So let's dive in and learn about what happens. The Big Orange Splot by Daniel Pinkwater. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way. So did everyone else on Mr. Plumbean's street. This is a neat street, they would say. And then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knows why. And he dropped the can, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbean's house. Oh, too bad, everyone said. Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbean, but he didn't paint the house right away. He looked at the big orange spot for a long time, then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing the big orange spot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbean, we wish you'd get around to painting your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbean. He got blue paint, some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange blot was still there. Then he got more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. In the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same. But Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange spot, and there were little orange spots. There were stripes, and there was pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. The people said, Mr. Plumbean has popped his cork, and they went away muttering. That day, Mr. Plumbean bought carpenter's tools. That night, he built a tower on the top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day, the people said, Mr. Plumbean has gushed his mush and lost his marbles. They decided they would pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, thorn bushes, and onions. And in the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in a hammock between two palm trees. They saw an alligator laying in the grass, and Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. Mr. Plumbean has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbean, what have you done to your house? The people shouted. My house is me, and I'm it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams, said Mr. Plumbean. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbean to go have a talk with him. Tell him that we liked it before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours so we can have a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night. Early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to Mr. Plumbean. What have you done to your house? They shouted at the man. My house is me, and I'm it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all of my dreams, said the man who had always loved ships. He's just like Mr. Plumbean, the people said. He's got bees in his bonnet. And then one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about the dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbean's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house to fit his dreams. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbean and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we'd like to be, and it looks like all of our dreams." I hope you enjoyed the Big Orange Splot. Thanks for listening. See you guys soon.